Just starting off a value here. Is he the best like pure football player on this list? Probably not. But in terms of being the best quarterback that's available, Dak Prescott is number one on my list. I feel like this makes a ton of sense. He's not franchise tag yet. We don't know what's going to happen with that. And he would go for probably 38 to 40 million dollars a year right now on the open market, if not more. So he's the number one free agent. And if he leaves Dallas, that's going to start a huge bidding war.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that I have him as number one on my board as well. I mean, for one thing, he's a starting quarterback, and if you're a good quarterback, you're going to end up on the list regardless. On top of this, you have, I think he's really good, and I think that I don't know if Dallas can franchise tag him for a second year, although it does seem like the franchise tag for a second year is still less money than he wants. So maybe you could, but they're in an interesting spot, and if he's someone who hits the open market, I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up with 40 million a year.
Yeah. I'm curious how much he's going to, is there a holdout scenario if he basically is given the franchise tag again? This guy just came off a brutal injury, and one of those freak injuries that, you think about your career long and hard with that kind of injury. Is he thinking about that and saying, do I want to play on a 1-year deal again, or do I want to lock up some long-term money? So I think there is some holdout scenario here if they sign him to another franchise tag and can't work out the long-term deal.
That's a good point too. Yeah. What would you do if you're Dak Prescott? Do you hold out?
If they franchise tag me again, yeah, I'd probably hold out.
I think it's one of those things that makes sense, but then you remember that he's basically turning down like $40 million to do that.
Yeah, but the thing is like if he could get that still, he would still get, even if he sat out the year, he'd probably go for $40 million next year, wouldn't he?
Sure, but you're losing a year. You're losing a year that you could get that money.
I agree, but I do think that there is a scenario where he could do it. I don't know how long he'll hold out or if he'll wait till basically the start of the year and miss training camp as some guys do. But I do think there's a scenario where he holds out and says, I'm not playing unless I get a long-term deal. This is something he's wanted for a long time. And, especially after an injury like that, I think it's important to him.
Yeah. I think this is a good point by Ali, who says, if Dallas franchises Dak again, the Cowboys have to break the bank in order to sign him long-term. It does feel like if they do franchise him again, that basically is it. And he's not coming back to Dallas unless they blow all together offers out of the water. So another interesting thing. And with a lot of quarterback needed teams, this could be he's definitely very interesting to see what'll happen there.
Yeah. And the pace he was playing at last year where that offense was really rolling when he was healthy, I think he would net a huge offer.
Yeah. All right. Number 2, I'm going Allen Robinson. I think he's just best player on the board. If you take positional value out of account, he's an elite wide receiver. He's one of the best wide receivers. You can make an argument for him being a top 5 wide receiver. He's certainly one of those guys, and he hasn't gotten the respect he deserves with playing in Jacksonville and then playing in Chicago, where they haven't had good quarterback play with him there. So, he's another franchise tag candidate, but I also think that he's someone who would get a huge deal in the open market, and I think that he could live up to it. And it would be really interesting to see what he could do, like if he were to go to a team that has it. Like if he goes back to Jacksonville, and you get to see like a Trevor Lawrence throwing to him, that could be fun.
Yeah, man, could he go back to Jacksonville? That'd be funny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I was doing some research and I was looking at some other opinions on this too. Why is there such a widespread belief that Chris Godwin's a better signing than Allen Robinson right now?
Well, I would say Chris Godwin's probably had the higher height of his season last year. I think it's a better season than any of the ones Robinson has had. But yeah, I agree. I think Robinson's great. I have Robinson higher on my board too.
Yeah, I had him at number 2 as well. I think he's elite. I think with a real quarterback throwing to him, he could be a top 5 receiver in the NFL, honestly. This is kind of one of those ones, like, how D-Hop was always viewed as really good, and then he finally got Watson and all of a sudden took off, and now he's one of the best guys in the league. I could see that happening with Robinson this year if they don't franchise tag him, or if Chicago manages to get a quarterback there that can...
No, if they don't franchise tag him.
If they don't, yes, basically.
Yeah, right, because that's what we're
Yeah. So, I think that he's in a situation where if he can get an offer somewhere else and go there and they have a quarterback that can really help him, Yeah, I think he can end up in a top 5 to 6 receivers in the league.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think he's great, and hopefully we get. I just hope free Allen Robinson. Get him on a team with a quarterback.
Yeah, and I'll transition to the next guy because it fits. It's Chris Godwin for me. Really talented receiver. As I said, I don't think he's better than Allen Robinson, but he's still a number one receiver on a lot of football teams, and he's been playing basically as a number two for his career because Mike Evans is just so good. But he has great speed. He can run on the outside. He can run in the slot. He does a lot of different things really well, and that versatility makes him basically play in any sort of offensive system. So I think Chris Godwin's number 3 for me.
Yeah, Godwin, interesting situation as the Big DZ points out in the chat a little bit that there was injuries last year. I do think that maybe could throw a wrench in things. He's another franchise tag candidate. There's going to be a lot of them at the top here. I think that he's someone who, like you said, he's kind of in this weird spot of he hasn't gotten as much targets because he's been that number 2 guy, but he still was on pace for 1,500 yards before his injury 2 years ago. So he's clearly a guy who can be a number 1 receiver. And we've seen that when Mike Evans went out 2 years ago, he was able to fill that role. So, he's great. He can do it all. He can play every position. And he's someone that plenty of teams are going to line up to pay $100 million for.
Yeah, and there has been talks that he may take a hometown discount, right, to stay in Tampa Bay and stay with that team, which I think is honestly a little crazy to want to do. But if he wants to win Super Bowls, it's a good idea. So it's he's a super talented receiver. I do think, like you said, he can add a big offer anywhere around the league.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll get $100 million. I said that earlier, maybe, but $80 million for sure. And one other thing is he's young. He's what, 24, 26, something like that, mid-20s. So that's part of why I think some people have him valued higher than Robinson. So that factors in as well.
Yep, 24 years old. Hopefully, the one thing I think you'd look at with him is he had a little case of the drop stat in the season last year. Hopefully, that's out of his system by the time the next year rolls around.
Yeah, I agree. We'll go on to number 4. This was number 3 on my board. I actually had Godwin at 5. Taylor Moton, who is the tackle for Carolina, only 26 years old and has been playing really good football. I think that when you can get a good, I would say maybe even a great tackle who's only 26 years old, who had coming off of a good season from Carolina, really played well his entire rookie contract. He seems like he's 100% going to stay in Carolina, whether that's tag or re-sign. But I do feel like if he's available, he can rack up some big money.
Yeah. So I didn't have him on my list only because I thought I saw a report that he was getting franchise tag. But it seems like he's a top 5 free agent candidate if he hasn't been yet. And he seems like he's well on his way to being franchise tag because he's an elite right tackle, and tackle's such a premium position that whenever you can get a guy at one of those spots, you lock him up right away. And he's a guy, they're going to franchise tag and make a long-term deal. He's really talented on that offensive line, does a lot of things. I thought him, they were willing to let Trey Turner go because they thought he was so good on that right side. So I think he's a perfect fit for Carolina, and he's going to stay there for a long time.
Yeah, probably. We don't spend too long on him. Let's go to number 5.
Well, I have another tackle. I'm going Trent Williams, someone who's been really good for San Francisco. Just a monster all over the field for a left tackle, and he's been one of the best for a number of years. So I'm going Trent Williams.
Can you be a monster all over the field if you're a left tackle? Aren't you mostly a monster just in one spot of the field?
Well, he has plenty of it. He has plenty of instances where I see him run like 5 yards to truck a guy.
That's true. Good on screen passes.
Yeah. So he's a monster no matter what, though.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just being mean. No, Trent Williams is great as well. Again, he's a bit older, which is why I think I would put Moton ahead. And we were all kind of thinking like when he had the whole thing with the team formerly known as the Washington Redskins. I think we were all concerned about how well is he going to be able to play. Turns out very well. He had a very good season with San Francisco. And again, that tackle position, you're going to pay a premium to fill that up. And I'm sure that he'll get a offer somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think San Francisco might try and get him back just because they really wanted him there to begin with. I think he could be a really good piece on that San Francisco team as that team gets healthy.
Yep, I agree. All right, so number 6 now. This is my pick. I'm going to go Kenny Golladay. We're sticking with wide receivers, some good wide receivers here. One of the more real, again, another real underrated receiver for Detroit. Had some really good years in Detroit, and I do think that, again, could the Lions tag him? I don't know, maybe, but at the same time, I do think that he's someone who could get a big payday and would deserve it. There's a lot of teams that could use a receiver, and he can definitely be a good one, especially if guys, some teams are more interested in Robinson or Godwin. Maybe you could get him at a bit of a lower price.
Don't you think there's going to be a team that's so excited that they get him, even though they miss out on Robinson and Godwin?
What do you mean?
I think that those two are still going to be the top two guys under the premium targets.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's still plenty of teams looking for wide receivers, and someone's going to end up with him and just be ecstatic that they got him at his price. Just because I could see that happening where he maybe goes for a little bit less because he wasn't one of the top two guys, but he's still an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, he seems like the kind of guy where, like, maybe if he goes to, like, if you, for example, went to the Patriots, like a lot of the casual Patriots fans would kind of just be like, oh man, we didn't get Robinson or Godwin, but then he still is great for them, and everyone loves the signing.
What's your dream scenario for him? Where would you want him to go?
Tampa Bay, probably. I think that would make sense. We could use a receiver.
Yeah. No, who besides your team, where would you want him to go?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Let me think about it for a second. I mean, the first team that popped in my mind would be maybe like I don't know why it was Carolina, but that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I feel like because
here's a scenario for you.
Okay, yeah,
I'll give you
ahead.
one. So how would you feel about him in Baltimore?
I like it. I mean, again, they're probably gonna have to overpay a bit because that's not necessarily a fun job. I feel like that's kind of like it's almost like you're taking a job in like a really blue collar, like dangerous thing where you might get like black lung or something. Like you're gonna have to overpay a bit to play in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean that's true. It's just this is a team that's needed a number one wide receiver for 2 years now, and I feel like if they're gonna try and maximize what they can out of Lamar, I think they need to make a move like that.
Yeah, I also feel like there's a really good chance he just ends up going to like the Jets or something, like some not great team that has a lot of money just overpays for him.
Yeah, I mean that's a scenario I see too. Yeah, he's super talented, so I think he is going to get a payday.
Yeah. All right, number 7. Who do you got?
All right, I'm going to go with a linebacker here. This is your guy, Lavonte David, Super Bowl champion. Lavonte David just does everything really well at linebacker that I think he's going to get. As we've talked about a couple times already here, this is probably with his age, maybe his last big payday. And I think he's going to get it because he does a little bit of everything. He can rush really well. He can cover the run. He can cover the pass really well. He just does everything at the linebacker spot you want. He checks all the boxes. He's elite. I think he's a guy that's going to net one big payday here, unless the Bucs can find a way to bring him back.
Yeah, I mean, Lavonte David is great. I mean, I've been beating this drum for a while. The most underrated player in the league, and I think that this is good. I had a few players ahead of him. Also, I think that the age thing is, he's starting to get up there in age a bit, so there is that factor. But I absolutely think that he's someone who can really help a team take the next step, and he knows how to lose, and he clearly now knows how to win. And he's an incredible leader. You see how Devin White has grown from being awful in coverage to being really good in coverage and things like that towards the end of the year. So I think that, I don't want to see him go, but he could certainly help a lot of teams. So this is a good pick here.
Yeah. So what would be your feeling about that, really? Because it's like, you look at, he's obviously, all-time great Buccaneer, one of the best, been with the team for a long time. But at the same time, you look at some of your free agents, as we've already brought up, we brought up Godwin, and there's Shaq Barrett as well. 2 guys that are at premium positions. Would you be okay if they addressed those premium positions and said, you know what, David, thanks for everything you did. But we got White here. We're going to pair him with a young linebacker, and, you can go ahead and get your best offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should do what's best for their team. And if they feel like that's letting David go, I think that they can do it. I think get rid of Godwin. Don't get rid of David, because I think that they can replace Godwin easier. But I mean, personally, it's like he won a Super Bowl. Like, so if you want to go, then go. Like, you stayed here for forever. You won a Super Bowl here, and I think that they can kind of. It wouldn't feel guilt. It wouldn't, when Gerald McCoy left, it kind of just felt dirty because he played with us for so many years, and we were so bad, and then he just unceremoniously gets cut, and that's it. With David, we won a Super Bowl with him, so if he goes, it's like, well, we won a Super Bowl, we had these great times. Go play somewhere else and get some money. I'm not really going to be mad at it.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I'm still fascinated what's going to happen with the Bucs and how they retool this team. So I think it'll be an interesting part, and I think David's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think so too. Number 8, I'm going to go with Brandon Sheriff here, the guard for Washington. Again, I have a few offensive linemen still on the board as well. I think he's a really good player, and again, if you can get some offensive linemen any way you can get them, that's what you do. And I think that he could be a good pickup for someone.
Yeah, I mean, he's a beast in the line. He plays so angry. I really like him there. There's just no way Washington can let him go, can they?
Well, Washington typically likes to overpay for mediocre players, and he's good. So that might be a concern.
Overpay.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, that's true. I think he's gonna warrant a lot of money, and I hope Washington can bring him back because I think he's such an important player for them. And yeah, I mean, he's super talented. I really like him, and I like his game there.
Yeah. All right. And again, the offensive lineman, we don't have to spend hours on him. Number 9, who do you got?
Someone who I think had a little bit of a down year for his standards, but I think is still going to bounce back because he was basically trying to do everything for the secondary. I'm going Anthony Harris here. Still one of the best free safeties in the league, even though he had no interceptions compared to 6 the year before. And like I said, I think a lot of that just had to do with the Vikings secondary being a complete train wreck, more so than his game. I thought he still played pretty well, just having no help around him. So I'm going to go with Anthony Harris here. I still think he's an elite player at that backside.
Yeah, I think he's great. I had him, so he gets selected 9th here. I had him at 13, so I had him a bit lower. I actually have another safety ahead of him, but I do think he is really good. And like you said, the weirdness that was the Minnesota Vikings last year with a horrible secondary, it was really hard to evaluate him as a player. So chances are he's still what he was the year before, although one of the real casualties of the franchise tag, as he was tagged last year. And now seems like he maybe could have gotten $1 more the year before.
Yeah. No, it does seem like it, but I still think he's going to net a big offer. I still
probably.
think the tough thing is, like, we're saying this, but at the same time, with the cap going down and all this, it's going to be tough for a lot of these teams to approach a lot of these guys. But I think he's still a guy that's going to warrant some big money as a big-time safety. So I think there's going to be teams who need help at the back, especially as a deep safety, and he's going to be able to fill it, and hopefully he has a team with better corners around him.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And what you said is a big point, too, about the cap drop of we just don't know how many of these guys are going to end up taking like 1-year deals just to try and, sort of prove it deals, and then hopefully you get a bigger offer the next year because more cap room.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be tough for a lot of teams. I think it's going to affect more the mid-tier free agents more than our top 20 guys.
Yeah, you may be right. Okay, number 10, I'm going Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett coming off of a huge playoff run. He was the NFL's leading sack artist 2 years ago, and then last year, I guess this year, whatever you want to say, he was also incredibly dominant, and especially in the Super Bowl. So he can show up in big games. He showed up really in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. I had him as 8 on my board. He gets selected 10th here. I feel like this is a steal.
Yeah, I mean, he's still, an incredible player on the defensive line. There was no, I had him, a couple spots. I had him below Scherf, another safety, and of course Harris, but he's still an incredible pass rusher. So, and you're getting a guy at a premium position who's, could change an entire defense depending on where he goes. The one thing I docked him slightly because, as we talked about in the season, he seemed to play at a lower level when Vita Vea wasn't on the field. And I know I probably said Vita Vea's name wrong. I'm still going to say it that way anyway.
Vita Vea.
Regardless, so it seemed like he played at a little bit of a lower level when he wasn't on the field, and he's been a guy for basically his entire career, paired with some really good defensive linemen. Is that something that's helped his career, or is that something that can he be great even if he's on like the Jets?
I don't think anyone. Well, I mean, the Jets are maybe not the best example because they actually have a good interior D line.
Well, yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to think of a bad defensive line.
How about the Patriots?
Like the bank? Yeah, the Patriots. There you go. You can say it. I didn't want to say it, but you can.
Yes. You didn't want to say it, but I can. Much like pronouncing Vita Vea's name correctly.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. No,
although you're sleeping on Adam Butler a little bit here, so.
Okay, I don't think I am. No, sorry. All due respect to Adam Butler. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is a concern, but either way, someone's going to pay him a lot. Number 11, who do you got?
All right, so I had another safety. That's Justin Simmons. He's a monster. He's great for the Broncos. He had the past 2 seasons. He's been one of the best in the league, and he's going to net a huge payday if Denver doesn't franchise tag him.
Yeah, Justin Simmons is great. He was that safety I mentioned earlier who I had ahead of Harris. I have him at number 10 on my board. He goes 11 here. So, I mean, he's great. He's certainly one of those underrated players who you're a safety for a team that hasn't won much, so no one's really going to talk about you. But he's very good, and, the people that are in charge of offering contracts certainly have watched his tape, and he's going to get a big deal.
Yeah. How about Vic Fangio, by the way? Eddie Jackson, then Justin Simmons. 2 guys with boring names that he makes into these all-time great players. It's just something Vic Fangio does.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's unbelievable coaching to get guys with boring names to still have success.
Yeah, exactly. That's harder than it looks.
Exactly. All right, let's just move. I mean, do you have anything else to say about Justin Simmons?
No, I think we pretty much touched on everything I had.
Yeah, that's fine. Number 12, I'll go with a New England Patriot. How about Joe Thuney here? Again, offensive lineman on the board. He was franchise tagged the year before. Very good for New England. Again, New England probably will let him walk because they know they can just draft all-pro in the 6th round in terms of offensive line, so they're fine there. But this seems like this could be a sort of a move that flies under the radar, but ends up having a big impact.
Yeah, and I think if he goes to a team that's looking for a particular system, like a heavy running system, like a team, like if they want to add him to like Indianapolis and put him in front of Jonathan Taylor, because he's, one of the best run blockers in the league. His pass blocking's not bad either, but the run blocking is really where he's special. There's a team that's going to be able to get him, and I think, he's going to have an instant impact in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, this seems like it could also be like a good landing spot for maybe like a Miami or, some of these teams that need offensive line help. And again, I think that you could see some of these other offensive linemen getting bigger deals. Maybe with the cap drop, you can get them to a lower price.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because he and Scherf, I think, are definitely the 2 premium guys at the guard positions. I know they play opposite sides, but they're still the 2 premium guys at the guard positions that I think are going to net a lot of money. But how does that affect them overall if they're if there's not enough cap space to fill out some of these rosters with the cap drop?
Yeah, I agree. All right, again. Offensive lineman, only so much you can say. Number 13, who do you got?
So this guy, I think, is going to be a casualty of the New Orleans Saints, basically money laundering. I don't even know how to describe it anymore. Marcus Williams, I think he's a phenomenal coverage safety. He's 24, and I don't think they have the money to sign him. I think he's going to be able to get some money. You don't typically find players at this age who are this talented on the open market, and I think he's going to be because the Saints don't have money to spend.
Yeah, no, I think he's really good as well. I had him as number 16 on my board. He goes 13 here, so we're in the same ballpark. He's absolutely very good. Again, him being a safety is probably the worst thing you can say about him just because there's not as much value there as there is in other stuff. Also, him being sort of a cover 2 safety, if you're a cover 1 team, do you want to sign him or not? I think that could hurt his value, but he was incredible. Just, with the exception of 1 play, he's had a great career so far. Yeah,
no kidding. Yeah. I mean, really, he has though. So I think he's he is going to be someone who might be looked at by a few different teams. I'm excited to see where he ends up.
Yeah, I absolutely am too. All right, I'm going to go now. I'm going to give you my 14th pick. How about someone who I believe we did a draft like this last year, and this guy was on the list last year, although I think we only did like 8 players. Unique Ngakoue. Unique Ngakoue. I had him at number 12 on my board. He goes 14 here. I think that he's someone who can absolutely, he's a really good player, good pass rusher, might not necessarily be the most dominant run stopper, but he's someone who can play. And I think that, again, if you can get after the quarterback, you're going to get some money in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And, he proved basically on 3 different teams in the past year plus that he can still be effective. He wasn't, his numbers weren't awesome in after leaving Jacksonville, but he still did pretty good. And he still did some, had some effectiveness in Baltimore and Minnesota. So I think he's a guy that has shown that he has value around the league, and he's going to be able to use that to get a free agent contract.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. You pretty much said everything I had to say. Number 15, who do you got?
Yeah. How about J.J. Watt? J.J. Watt's on the open market, not something we didn't really expect. You're not going to get, prime J.J. Watt anymore at this level. But if you're willing to pay, $12 to $15 million, although it sounds like he's getting $15 to $16 million. If you're willing to pay $15 million, that's still a really effective player, even though he's not going to be at the same level of his peak. He's still going to be really effective in a everyday scenario.
Yeah, no, he was actually, amazingly enough, 15 on my board, ends up going 15 here, although I did still have some people higher on my board who I haven't taken yet. But yeah, JJ Watt's really good. Not exactly a hot take there. I think we all know JJ Watt, good at football. He brings a veteran, and I actually think he's underrated. Like, I think that people keep waiting for him to like fall off. He keeps playing really good football. He's continued to play really good football, and I think that he was a lot better last year than his numbers would show, given that they didn't have a ton, especially on the interior defensive line to help him out. So him going to a better defensive line, I could see him still being a double-digit sack guy, which is, saying something.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, the one knock on him is, something that's been on him for a couple of years is his health. I think that's the only thing he really has going against him. Still an incredible football player.
Yeah, should be interesting. And, he wants to play for a contender, so we could see a good team with him on there, which should be fun. I'll go number 16. How about Corey Linsley, the center for Green Bay, coming off a very good season? He's been playing well. Again, another offensive lineman here. I actually originally had him a little bit lower on my board, but I decided to make a shift in the middle of the draft. I'm going to draft him here at 16. I just think he's really good. And I think that, again, you can get a good offensive lineman. That's always helpful, and Green Bay might not be able to re-sign him. So that could be another subtle but very interesting move.
Yeah, I had him on my honorable mentions list just outside the top 20, just because center position isn't necessarily as high of a premium as some of these other spots. But I mean, for everything we've said about the Packers offensive line for years now, they can continue to be really good. And he's part of that offensive line that's just fantastic. So it makes a lot of sense. He's been a real player with Rodgers the last few years.
Yeah, agree. All right, number 17. Who do you got?
All right, flying through here, I got Hunter Henry, by far the best tight end on the board. Really effective pass catcher. He's going to be able to, I think, maybe start a mini bidding war at the tight end position just because he's so much better than everybody else.
Here's my concern about Henry. I did not have him. I had him as an honorable mention. I didn't have him as a top 20. And my reason for it was because he can't stay healthy. He's had a real issue staying healthy. And my concern is that how much money are you willing to give a guy like that who, he's good, don't get me wrong, but I guess it's concerning. It's similar to like a Tyler Eifert type thing of like, how much do you pay someone who you don't know how many games they're going to play?
I can understand the argument. I still would pay him, though. I still think he's an incredible pass catcher, and I think he's better than Eifert. That's the only reason I would. I get the argument, but I still think he's good enough to play, and I would still pay him a contract.
How much would you give him? You're Patriots. You're the Patriots GM. How much do you give him?
I got to look at the highest paid tight end here to compare.
Okay, sorry. Well, here I'll just say a little bit more about Henry. Like, again, he is an incredible pass catcher, and especially great fantasy guy for sure because he's very good in the red zone. So there are plenty of things I like about Henry. And again, I had him as an honorable mention. So I have him as like a top 25 guy, and he goes here at 17. I'm not like that. I don't know how much I really want to give
Yeah.
him.
So currently he's third in the league at $10 million a year. 10.6 he's 10,607,000, which is third in the league. He's below. I wouldn't pay him obviously any higher than that. I wouldn't put him in the Kittle or Kelsey range of 14 to 15 million. But if I can get him at that 10.5 million Austin Hooper's at, or maybe 9 million, closer to like guys like Gronk and Kyle Rudolph, I think that's fair value for Henry.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have like an Austin Hooper though. No, I mean, again, I feel like there's similar talent, and again, like availability is a real thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. It can be. I still think that he's talented enough to be able to generate an offer here, though. We'll see what happens with him. I still think he's still only 27. So I think he's going to be able to get an offer.
Well, and here's the argument for him too is that in football you have to take risk, and if you take this risk and it works out, well, now you just got an incredible tight end for a much lower price than you probably would have had to pay him. And, he did play over 900 snaps last year. So
yeah,
maybe he's turned a corner. But, in the previous 4 years, his most was 615. So that's just the concern. And obviously he had 2018 when he only played 14 snaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. I agree. He still played, 14 games last year. And, he's played 14 or more games in 3 of his 5 years. So I think there's enough. I think there's enough of a track record to say I'm willing to pay him and take that chance.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, number 18 now. I'll go John Johnson. Now he's another guy who the Rams play 2 safety deep looks a decent amount. So again, it's a certain system. How will he play outside the system? But he played really good in that system. So he might be a system player, but he's a really good one. And he also might not be a system player. So who knows? So that's why he's a little bit lower. And there's already, we have 3 safeties ahead of him. So safety heavy free agency. But again, he's someone who maybe you could get on a discount and it could work out.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's someone who I think it's similar to a thing like Galladay. If those 3 guys hit the open market and all get signed by teams, I think there's a team that's going to be able to get him at a discount and be really thrilled about it because he's almost just as good as those other guys. He's incredible. So if those other 3 guys hit the open market and get big deals, I think there's a scenario where Johnson maybe goes under the radar and goes to a really good team.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. All right, so we each have 1 pick left. Why don't you give your number 19 pick here?
Ooh, all right. I had back-to-back corners here on my list. I'll go with William Jackson III because I had him. I'm adjusting this on the fly because I actually had Richard Sherman above, but I think there's 2 things that play into this. I think Richard Sherman's obviously a guy who's constricted to a cover 3 defense. That's what he's played his whole career, and I think nobody's really going to change that out of Richard Sherman. So I think as the best corner on the market, I think he's a guy who can kind of create a mini bidding war here because he's the best corner on the market who can play multiple different styles compared to Sherman, who's kind of restricted to what he does. So I take Jackson here.
Yeah, there's certainly logic there. And again, the age thing comes into concern of Richard Sherman. I think that we all thought his career might be over a couple years ago after the Achilles injury. That didn't happen. I do have some players higher on the board, though. So I think this may be a bit of a reach here at 19.
That's fair. I think he's incredibly talented, and he's someone that I would definitely look at. But I can understand it either way. I think there's more purely talented football players, but I think of the value and trying to, there are teams like the Vikings who are really needy a cornerback. I think he's a guy who's going to be really valuable on the market.
Yeah, that's true. You're getting a solid starting cornerback, excuse me. So that's fine. All right, number 20 now. So I have 3 guys that were on my top 20 that I didn't, that I'm not going with here. Or I can only go with one of them. I still have Aaron Jones, Corey Davis, and I put Will Fuller on there. But to me, it's really between Aaron Jones and Corey Davis here. And I'm going to go with Aaron Jones. I think that he's a, dominant halfback. Again, I feel like Green Bay is going to try and find a way to get him. Who knows if you pay a running back, but in terms of just, pure value, I think that I'm always a fan of paying running backs for like 1 or 2 years. I just don't like these Ezekiel Elliott 6-year deals. If he'll take a 2-year deal, do it. I don't think Aaron Jones will. So that's the issue. That's where you run into trouble. But he's going to have a ton of value immediately. So Aaron Jones here will be 20, and that'll finish off this list.
I completely agree. He was one of the last guys on my list. Him, Richard Sherman, and Bud Dupree were 3 guys I had on the list. Had on my list still. But yeah, I mean, he's an incredible running back. I've talked up Aaron Jones basically all year. And if you're able to get him away from Green Bay, I think that's a big haul.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but again, the issue is, do you pay a running back? That's kind of the problem.
I mean, I'm with you. I wouldn't pay, like, if you can get him for like a 3-year deal, I think it's worth it. You know, if you can get him for a 3-year deal at a high end, I think it's worth it. I think it's a good move for any team.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when, you know, he doesn't have that much wear and tear compared to some other guys. So yeah, I also Corey Davis. I mean, he's a really underrated player. I think that, you know, he's one of those guys where it kind of works against him that he got drafted so high because, well, he hasn't lived up to that hype. Like, he's a consistent. I feel like I've seen enough that I would say he's like a Pro Bowl caliber receiver, if not that, at least like a consistent 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's going to be a place for him in the league for a long time. I think he's a guy who could be. I think him and Will Fuller are going to be interesting candidates, especially because not only is it a deep wide receiver free agent class, as we talked about, it's a deep wide receiver draft class too. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be available. Can those guys, you know, are those guys going to be able to get some represent some real value for teams?
Yeah, I could see Will Fuller maybe taking like a 1-year deal. He's an interesting guy where maybe he just tries to have a prove it year. You know, take a low, go to Kansas City for like $3 million. You know, do something like that. Just try to get as much money as possible. I don't know.
Please don't.
Yeah, why not though? Like, I mean, I think that would help.
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I also had Leonard Williams, who we didn't talk about, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Richard Sherman were my other honorable mentions. I think that a lot of good free agents, and we could see a lot of 1-year deals.
Yeah, Smith-Schuster and Williams made my honorable mention, and Matt Milano also, just because I think coverage linebacker is a premium spot now almost. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a deep free agent class. I think there's a lot of talented guys, and with this cap drop, it's going to be fascinating to see how this works.